of detail. So these next two pieces is power differentiation and something called excess capacity. We'll do it in about 15 minutes. And this is the big difference between monopolistic competition and your pure monopoly and oligopoly. Okay, so this is on the next page on 26, that very last page. In business, has anyone heard the term location, location, location? Ever heard that? People talk about, hey, what's one of the keys for success for a business? Location, location, location. Meaning that one of the biggest things that you can do to differentiate yourself from your competition is to have a really good location. Because if you have a really good location, it means that you are going to be visible now to your clients. And I'm gonna do this really quickly. When I taught I lived in St. Louis Park for a couple years, and you know where, I want you to visualize this. Do you know where Knollwood Mall is? This is Highway 7. Highway 7, 169, Knollwood Mall. So there was, a long time ago, there was a Target over here, and there was a Rainbow Foods. In order to get to this Rainbow Foods, at this stoplight, you had to turn here like you're going into Knollwood, but then you had to take a left and go down this way, and it was like winding back around, and you'd finally get there. It was kind of off the beaten path or out of the way. Well, that was like that for years. It was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not too long after I was there, so probably the late 90s or early 2000s, on the other side of Knollwood Mall, and this is like Texas Avenue here, so this is Texas Avenue, right? Right here, right behind this Knollwood Mall, a Cub Foods open. Now, I know that you're really impressed with my artistry, but what I want you to see and be more impressed with is how brilliant Cub Foods was, because what happened was this. Cub Foods then was able to convince the city of St. Louis Park to open up this entryway. They opened it up so people, all the traffic from Highway 7, could go right in there and get right to Cub Foods. Within 6 months, year and a half, this was 24/7. It went from being open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And within a couple years, it shut down. Why? Is it because Cub Foods is that much better than Rainbow Foods? Nope. It's because location, location, location. So businesses can really make a big impact and differentiate themselves from their competition if they can find the right location. Digitally, that means a business these days has to have a good functioning website. I remember 15 years ago looking for, my wife and I wanted to go out to eat, and she would bring up a restaurant. I would search it, and it didn't have a website yet. And both of us were like, I can't see their menu. And so I don't want to try it, because I don't know anything that they do. Right? And so nowadays, it's like if you, with the digital age that we're in, if you don't do that, it's a huge difference. So you don't have to write these different examples down. These two, it's all about, this is where your costs come from. Brand recognition and advertising. This is really the key way that you set yourself apart in monopolistic competition. It's because of advertising, either on price, on product, on quality, and it's about how do you get your brand recognized. Marketing folks, Isabella Avery, I'm going to throw you under the bus here. What's branding?
It's like how other consumers perceive your company or business.
That's good, right? This is about the consumer's ability. So what she said, how other people perceive you, how do they recognize your business? What do they know about you? That's your brand. Folks, it is so important for a business to build a strong brand. This is why, years ago, does anyone know who Michael Vick is? Michael Vick, okay, a few sports fans know who Michael Vick is. Michael Vick used to be the sweetheart of the NFL. He was a quarterback, running quarterback, was just crazy good. Eventually, all of his sponsors dropped him. Mr. Weedman, why did they drop Michael Vick?
Because they caught him betting on like dog fights. Right?
Yeah, so he was kind of running it.
Yeah, he was running.
He was kind of running a dog fighting enterprise. And so Nike, all these companies said, I don't think we want to have you as a client anymore, because if you were a business and if you have someone who's controversial, that hurts your brand. Businesses have to be so careful about this. I visited Target, and Target has. Did either of you guys go to Target for the senior intern thing? Any of you guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you guys happen to see their like digital room with all their TVs? Their social. Okay, so Target has this one room where they have some marketing, like digital marketing people, and they have monitors, TVs, all across this thing. What Target does is they monitor the social media for all the brands that they carry. So in case one of the brands that they carry ends up doing something bad or gets in trouble, they need to know about it before it gets to be such a big deal, because maybe they will want to drop it. Right? So Target has taken a hit recently. Their brand has taken a hit recently. And they've taken a hit recently because after President Trump wanted to do away with the DEI stuff across the entire country, what Target did is Target actually did away with their DEI program. That upset a lot of people. And so that injured their brand. Right? Years ago, Kobe Bryant was the sweetheart of the NBA. For a while, Kobe Bryant had a whole bunch of sponsors that dropped him. Why? Because he was married, and then he had relations with a young lady from Colorado who I don't believe maybe was 18, right about 18 or so, in that area. And then he was so good and so loved that kind of got brushed under the table for a while. But for a while, Kobe Bryant was horrible, so he was dropped. Businesses have to really pay attention to this, and they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. Did you know that Lions Tap was sued McDonald's a bunch of years ago? Does anyone know this? Our Lions Tap, little Lions Tap here in Indian Prairie, sued the giant behemoth McDonald's because McDonald's came out with a slogan when it came down to St. Patty's Day. They came up with a slogan that says, "Who's your patty?" And that's Lions Tap's slogan. And so they actually sued and won. They beat the behemoth of McDonald's, but it took money for them to be able to do that. And so that cuts into profit. But you have to protect this. If Lions Tap went to sue McDonald's, they lose that brand recognition of who's your patty. And it's really important. So businesses put a lot of that. So when you look at different things, how the power, the monopoly power that monopolistic competition has is because of how they have to differentiate themselves and how much it costs for them to do that. That's what I want you to see. So if you ever get that, like, what is it that gives Monopoly the power they have? It's this. It's the differentiation. Right? That's what gives them that power. All right, I'm going to skip through this and talk about this last piece, because I want to get your quizzes back and give you some time to do a handout as well. There's a really, this is kind of minutia. And I don't give you a ton of minutia stuff. But this is a little bit about minute detail about monopolistic competition. There's something called excess capacity. Think about what these two words mean. Excess means a lot, right, or too much, and capacity is how much can you do? What's your capacity? What excess capacity means for monopolistic competition is this: there are too many firms producing too little quantity at too high a cost. Because of monopolistic competition and how many firms they have and how small each of them are, it creates something called excess capacity. We have too many restaurants, let's say, that are too small, that aren't able to have economies of scale. So what I would say typically is, I'm just going to say this is not always, typically monopolistic competition does not have economies of scale. They typically don't have that. And if you recall from chapter 8 what this means, if you have economies of scale, that means you're like Walmart, like Target, like Costco, like Home Depot, you're big, and you're able to keep the cost low. Well, monopolistic competition, typically all your small businesses, they don't have this. So they produce too little, and their costs are too high because they don't spread those costs around. So what's the way to get around this? How do we get rid of excess capacity? We get rid of excess capacity by having fewer firms that are larger, that have economies of scale, which allows them to produce at a lower cost, and so it keeps the price lower. That's how we get rid of excess capacity. So again, how we get rid of this, the problem is we have too many firms that are too small, producing too high cost. We get rid of it by reducing the number of firms that do something, and then we make them bigger so we can keep their costs low. If that happened, folks, in monopolistic competition, if that happened to the restaurant industry, what would be the negative impact on consumers? The positive is you possibly could get lower prices. But the negative impact is if you have fewer firms in that industry compared to having a whole lot of them, how are you impacted? Say that again?
Less options.
You have less choices. Folks, this country is based off of excess, right? I mean, that's why some people hate this country, because there's just excess of everything. We have hundreds of restaurant choices around here, right? And some of them, the prices are kind of high. So how do we get around that? If we want to solve that, we combine them, we make them the size of the Asia Mall or Home Depot, and we just say, hey, Eden Prairie, you have 3 options to eat. We wouldn't be happy, right? Not in the United States of America. We wouldn't be very happy with that. So here's how you graph this. You can ignore this one, it's perfectly fine. But what I'd like you to do is I'm gonna have you do this. I'm gonna have you do this, and then when you finish this, and here's what you're gonna key on. I want you to key on this down here. Notice where this bracket is. The excess capacity, if you were to graph this, it is the difference between the minimum of the ATC and your actual profit maximizing quantity. It's this different, that space is the excess capacity. And so just you can quickly graph that. This is in the long run, you can see. Once you do that, I have over here the last 15 minutes. That we actually have 17 minutes. Beautiful. I'll jot this down what I'll have you do, and then I'll get stuff. There are certain stuff handed out to you.